welcome to Tommy Surfs. I'm Tommy and I'm here to review the all-new Dominator 2 by Firewire. Here I have the 5.4, which is 19 3/8 wide and 2 1/4 inch thick, coming in at 25.9 liters. I'm 5'8" and weigh 145 pounds. The Dominator 2, which the name implies, is the evolution of the Dominator, which was originally released back in 2008. I've owned and loved the original Dom in both the 5'6" and the 5'8", but back then I weighed 170 pounds. Now that I'm considerably lighter, I am opting to review the 5.4. The noticeable difference is in the tail. It went from a round tail to a squash with a slight hip at the front fins. Also, the concaves are slightly different. Although it's still a single at the front foot, it now splits into a subtle double and a V out the back. The board comes in the helium construction, which is basically a 1-pound EPS core with a glass laminate, then a 3mm high-density composite skin, then another glass laminate, and then finally a coat of bioresin, which they use for sanding. So this part of the video, I have the Dominator 2 alongside the Seaside. The Seaside is 5'3", and the Dominator is, as I mentioned, 5'4". Now, as you can see from the image, the Seaside is much wider. I think it's about 1 inch wider, and most of that width is going to be up in the front, so much fuller nose. So it's definitely a much better paddler and a wave catcher. Some big differences, obviously, between the two are the tail. And if you notice on the Seaside, you'll see a spine down the middle, like kind of a shadow down the middle, and that's because there's a pretty heavy concave in V's. Now, I've ridden the Dominator so far as a quad, and I'm not sure I liked it. Here's some video of me surfing it, and it was not a great day, but I found that with the quad setup, the board was a little too loose and almost too sensitive, and I'm used to the tighter setup of the Seaside. Here, as you can see, I have the Dominator 2 set up as a 2+1. I wanted to get the same feeling as a Seaside, so I thought I'd start off with the exact same fins, except these are made by NVS, and as you can see, it says Seaside. This was back in the days when they actually made these fins. However, they don't sell these anymore. So NVS, this is their Apex series, and it's a very stiff fin. And there's a little stabilizer, and my fear is that stabilizer is probably a tad too small. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because if you look at the Futures setup, the box on the Seaside, the rear of the front box lines up with the front of the rear box. So that kind of dictates the spacing. The fins are kind of spread out. Now, comparing that to the Dominator 2, the rear of that front fin box actually overlaps onto the front of the rear box, which means that they're bunched together, a little bit closer together. So if I were to run the same quad setup, the Machado fins, the back fins would be a little bit further up. The issue with that is then, because of the bunching, it would be loose, and it would probably not have the same drive. So here I'm surfing the 2+1, and the first like 15 or so waves are going to be on the 2+1, and then I'll show you some waves on the quad. But as you look at the waves, and I don't want to do a play-by-play, but rather I kind of want to touch on a couple things, because I'm guessing most people want to compare this to the Dominator 1. Now, I've had an opportunity to surf a 5.4 Dominator, which was my buddy's, and from what I remember, they're very similar, except I think I ran them as a thruster before, and so that was probably the only difference. And generally speaking, I don't think you're going to get much of a performance difference. It's not like you're going to get on this board and all of a sudden it surfs way better than the old Dominator. I believe that if you are a very advanced surfer, there's characteristics about this board that lends itself to better maneuvers, better performance maneuvers. it's really hard to explain, but if you're a beginner, intermediate, even a good surfer, I'm not 100% sure that you're gonna feel like this board is any different than the original Dominator by much. Other than the fact that I believe the volume's a little bit lighter, the rails are a little bit thinner. And that hip does create a slight pivot point, and you could probably see it from when I do a bottom turn. You'll see me I almost fall forward. And this is the wave back. Oh, I will say that I did like this board backhand better than I do on my Seaside, but it needs a wave. And in all these waves, that if you watch it, if the wave is steeper, the board works. When the wave gets a little flat, then the board kind of bogs here and there. And I think it's because I'm overturning it, and then I end up pushing the rails into the water too much. This is an okay day. See, the backside turn, you can really press on the bottom of the back of the board, and because of the narrower tail than the Seaside, it responds very well. So comparing this again to the normal Dominator, if you are at the point where you want to refresh your Dominator because it's getting old, then obviously this is the choice, and it's going to be a little bit better in terms of performance if you're at that level. But if you are looking for a new board, you just happen to be on a Dominator and you don't know what to buy, if your waves look anything like the ones I surf, where they're soft, big or small, they're just usually soft, I would say the Seaside is a much better board for you. So now here, I believe this is the first wave on as a quad. And it's a much different day. It's a much smaller day, so it's going to be really hard to compare. And it was also the very first time I surfed the board. But I noticed that I kind of get hung up at the top, and when I pump off the bottom, it doesn't drive me forward as well as it was as a 2+1. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it. So my personal opinion, again, I don't think there's enough of a difference for you to go out and buy this board if you're happy with the Dom and your Dom's in good shape. If it's time for a refresh, go get this board. That last wave here was a good one because it was steeper. And then if you are just looking to get a new board, and it's not a refresh, meaning you don't know what to buy, you just want something that works good in all conditions, the Seaside. And if you look at any of my other videos, it kind of speaks for itself. In fact, at the tail end of this video, I'll just put a couple clips of the Seaside and the Dominator 2 on the exact same day. So that way you could kind of see the difference in the speed on the same type of wave. Having said all that, if you already have a Seaside, or that's something you're already going to get, and you also want a Dominator, I would say you probably want to get them relatively the same volume. That way because here the Dominator 2 is a 5.4, comes in at 25.9. I believe my Seaside is a 5.3, even though it's shorter, it comes in at like 27 or 28 liters. So a couple liters, and it's an inch wider. So it just works in broader conditions. Where I think my Seaside might fail is when it gets a little big and steep, like 5-6 feet and super steep, where I have too much speed and it becomes difficult to actually turn the board due to the width of the board. So think about that when you go out and get one of these. This is in my leader range, but it is just a shorter board than I would normally ride. And I had a lot of difficulty because of the width on these mushy waves. I just couldn't get in on some of them, and I couldn't get ahead of it. So now we're going to look at the comparison of the Dominator 2 and the Seaside in the exact same conditions, exact same day, literally waves back to back. So this is the Dominator 2, And one thing, if I don't know, it's a very soft wave, but when I do the bottom turn and drive off the bottom, I don't seem to get a lot of speed. Could be the fin setup, so I'll have to try others. Here's another wave where it's mushy, so I have to kind of tic-tac. And by the time I get the speed, actually I never got the speed on that one. So here, this one is a good example of what I'm talking about. When it's mushy, you got to really pump it, but it does this weird thing where it hangs up, and then as soon as it gets steep, you see me start cranking. So now, right after this is my Seaside. I literally went in and just grabbed it. I barely do the bottom turn, and you see me like projecting forward every time I press on the back of the board. I had enough speed to try to do an air. So that's how much more speed I get on this board on days like this, as you know, just my beaches. I'm not even trying, and it's just working. And I can get full turns. And I'm not worried about getting stuck behind it because I know I can get in front of it. Whereas the Dominator 2, I had to always really try to just stay in front of it. So I hope this helps. Please like, subscribe, comment, and just ask whatever questions you have, and maybe on ways I can improve some of these reviews. I just want to avoid trying to do the exact same thing that everyone else does. I'd rather kind of be in the mindset of helping you decide if this is the board for you and how that might fit into your quiver. Thanks.